Which Ole Miss player is likely out for the game against the Citadel? Which young player might step up and get a little bit more playing time? And which recruit is on campus this weekend as well? Ole Miss rolled against Louisiana Monroe. All of that and more. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former staff member at Ole Miss. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, currently the #1 sports podcast network in America. That is worth taking note as well. On today's show, we'll talk about a little bit about the pregame stuff going into the Citadel. We'll react a little bit to the game against Louisiana Monroe last night in men's basketball, and we will take your comments as well. Normally, we have Mike Huseman on this program. Mike Huseman not going to be in because we're going to spend a segment or so talking about basketball. So Mike got the day off essentially from this show. Really interesting stuff. The first thing, we'll start with football because, it just makes sense to start with football. It looks like Antonio Kite is not likely to play in this game today. He missed the game against South Carolina. Anybody that has a bump or a bruise into this football game, they're not going to put him out on the field. Ole Miss right now, I think something like 53.5 point favorites is, according to Grok, the XAI thing. This is the largest line that Ole Miss has ever had as a football program, for better or worse, whatever is going on there. But Ole Miss is favored by a ton of points, which means anybody that has a bump, a bruise, a nick, anybody that you want ready for Florida, that there's a potential that playing against the Citadel would cause them to miss Florida, they're not going to play football today. They're just not. It's a situation to where you want Trinidad Chambliss to look crisp throwing the football and then get him out at halftime and let Austin Simmons literally run the offense. You want Kewan Lacey to get 5 carries or less in this game. You want Kewan Lacey to play a quarter of this football game. Give the carries to Logan Diggs. Let Shakai Mills-Knight, Caleb Cunningham, those young guys have a role in this football game. And speaking of young guys, one rumor that's kind of floating around is LaDarian Clardy is getting in line to play football in the secondary for Ole Miss. Now, I'm not talking about when the game is out of hand. I'm talking about in the rotation. He spent a good portion of the week practicing with the twos, which means they are getting him ready to actually play. It'll be interesting to see if LaDarian Clardy gets into the game sometime in the first or second quarter of this Ole Miss the Citadel game. And Clardy is from Pensacola, Florida. He's a super athlete. You might remember the video that we put out during the offseason. Really, really good player. And he was the best athlete on every single field he stepped on, and that was in the state of Florida. So the transition to college, you knew there was going to be one, but you also knew that it was going to be slight. But LaDarian Clardy is definitely in position to play. And the other thing that came out, there's not many recruits visiting this weekend for obvious reason. You have just down the road a state in Georgia. You have a lot of stuff going on. But one thing that we want to point out is this recruits that are at Ole Miss this weekend, it's meaningful because that's not a situation of a game that you just want to go to. If you are at this game, you can pretty much look at this being a good news type situation in the near future. Now, doesn't mean they're going to commit. It means they probably have a pretty good chance to be in the discussion to do that relatively quick. 3 big name players. One of them is a commit in NASCAR McCoy. He came over from Georgia. But Dorian Barney, who is a Colorado commit, is on campus this weekend. And Danny Beal is visiting for this game. This is a defensive lineman that was committed to Oklahoma State. Those players, it's a real thing that they're on campus against the Citadel. I'll just put it like that. Doesn't mean they're going to commit to Ole Miss, but it also doesn't mean that they're not. So we'll see exactly how that goes in the future. Anyway, in the third segment of this show, just like always, it's going to be your segment. So comment in the comments, put where you're commenting from so you can get a shout out, and we will open it up to questions in segment 3 in about, 15 minutes or so. So just tune in for that as well. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Ole Miss versus the Citadel, the expectations of the game today. We talked about the big recruits that are on campus today. We talked about the person that could surprise with playing time and somebody that is actually going to be out. Antonio Kite likely is not going to play. Ladarian Clardy's in line for playing time, and Danny Beal is on campus on a recruiting visit as we speak. Though that's all the big 3 news for this week, and honestly, that's a pretty good deal for the Citadel week. So, when you look at this football game, what do you want to see? How do you want it to go? Because it's a real thing of what's going on. Do you want this game to be out of hand in a hurry and get to the second half and get the starters out of the game? Do you want it to be a little bit of a sloppy first quarter so that the defense or something like that is at least tested against the run schemes of the Citadel before you move in and get starters out in the second half? The one thing we can all agree with is the starters need to be out of the game in the second half, like shortly after the second half starts. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Ole Miss has the better team in this game by a mile. If it's close, Ole Miss is going to take a PR hit, just like they did against Washington State. If it's a blowout, nobody will talk about this game. This is one of those games that only bad things can come from it. So we'll see exactly what happens. Get through this game and get to the game against the Florida Gators, which I have said one of the biggest games, if not the biggest game in school history, because of what it means. Not who you play. It doesn't matter. They're not a very good team. But who you play is not important. It's about what it means. You beat Florida, you get into the playoffs, you're 10-1, all of that stuff, all of a sudden the coronation can happen. And you turn that last corner that we have all been waiting on this Ole Miss team to turn, if that makes sense. But we'll see exactly what happens. Playoff rankings, when they come out on Tuesday, Ole Miss wins the game, they'll still be at probably number 6. They might drop them down to number 7 because they love to penalize when you play an FCS team, unless you play them in September. If you play them in September, that's okay. But if you play them in October or November, that's just a horrible thing for whatever reason. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But again, before we get out of here, Antonio Kite likely not playing today. Ladarian Clardy in line for at least second team reps. It'll be interesting to see if he gets in the first or second quarter against the Citadel. And Danny Beal, the former commitment to Oklahoma State, is on campus as we speak. So pretty good stuff there. So when we come back, we will talk basketball. Chris Beard, Ole Miss defeated Louisiana Monroe by about 20 points last night. This is a pretty good basketball team, but we have thoughts. So stick around. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every single Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it all down. For Ole Miss, Kewan Lacey delivered in a big way. Ole Miss was up by 9, and Lacey, who had 167 yards on the night, busted a 55-yard touchdown run that put away South Carolina. They weren't a very good team, but they were able to put him away and get that breathing room. When the pressure was on, he came through, no hesitation, no delay, And if you've been watching week after week, this performance was not a fluke. Q1 Lacey is on a streak. And just like Q1 Lacey delivered for the Ole Miss Rebels, DoorDash delivers for your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it all up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period runs through November 18th. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcatcher you're listening to it on, and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing but keeps everything free. And Locked On is getting ready to change the game yet again, all in the name of having fun following your team. It is coming in December, and it is a must-have. And thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast in America. So that is pretty awesome stuff coming down the line. Anyway, so Ole Miss defeated Louisiana Monroe, I think the score 86-65. Here's a game that was interesting. Ilias Camerdine, he is probably, at this point, you look at him, it's like, this is the best player that's probably come through Ole Miss. This is an NBA player. And AJ Storr is looking like the AJ Storr that was at Wisconsin, not necessarily the AJ Storr that was at Kansas. That's a benefit. Travis Perry has struggled mightily. 2 points in the first game, did not score against Louisiana Monroe. That's kind of a get-right situation. Keza Jiffa, he's been pretty fantastic to start the season early. And Ole Miss is rebounding the ball this year. Ole Miss had trouble rebounding in year 1 and year 2, but this year they are getting on the boards, and James Scott and those guys are a big portion of that. But Ole Miss beat Louisiana Monroe 86-65. Ole Miss shot 47%, including 15 of 33 from three-point range. 13 turnovers, 43 rebounds, and 20 fouls. ULM shot 37.3%. They were 11 of 31. From three-point range, that's a pretty good number considering it's about what they shot overall. 15 turnovers, 26 rebounds, and 35 fouls. I may have hit the wrong button there. I may have fat thumbed that. So we'll see exactly how that goes. This is my thought on this. Ilias Camerdine is probably the most NBA-ready player that has ever come through the University of Mississippi. And this is through 2 games I'm saying that. He is making passes and doing things that we just haven't seen. And AJ Storr, once again, tied his career high or something in three-point shots, shooting very well from the outside. Travis Perry has not come on up to this point. Keza Jiffa, very good player indeed. Patton Peekins is starting to get some playing time. And one thing that's interesting, we like to talk about Chris Beard and positionless basketball. There's a stretch during the ULM game where it was all 3 of the guards 6'5", 3 6'5" guards, which means they can really D you up and they can guard down low. They can do the rapid switching, all of that stuff. That when the smallest person on the court is 6'5", that's a win. That is pretty hard not to get a win in that scenario. So I was impressed with what happened. I want to see Travis Perry get going because he can really shoot the lights out. Just because they've started a little bit slow, this isn't an indictment on him. Whenever he sees a ball go through the hole, you're going to see him catch fire, and he is a dead-eye shooter. He is. And so much and so impressive that Chris Beard is starting him at the moment. Even when he could go 6'5", 6'5", 6'5". But this Ole Miss team has a chance to do some pretty cool things. Now, on Tuesday night, one thing that's important, on Tuesday night, they play Memphis. That's the first opportunity that they've had to go against a team that can D them up at an elite level. Memphis was a NCAA tournament team a year ago. But this Ole Miss basketball team kind of slowly coming on. They're developing an identity. We'll see exactly how that goes. I'm pretty fired up right now of what Ole Miss basketball could be this season. I'm curious to see. They play against Memphis. The farewell to the Tad Pad, I think, is next week as well, something like that. And you go in there because they're tearing it down in the summer, which obviously tearing down Tad Smith kind of makes you sad. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, we are going to take your questions and kind of grab bag it for the next 15 minutes or so. Remember, if you comment, put where you're commenting from so I can shout that out as well. Ole Miss is getting ready to take on the Citadel at 12 o'clock Central Time on the SEC Network Plus. It's only available on streaming, but you can tune in and catch it there. You have Mississippi State and Georgia and TCU or Texas Tech and BYU. All those games are getting ready to start in about an hour. So we'll be able to check that. I love football season, especially when your team is good. And it is special when Ole Miss's football team is good. And right now, they are really good, like next level good. And by the way, before we take a break, BYU's quarterback wearing number 47 is basically an affront to science. And he needs to be punished for that, honestly. But when we come back, your comments, we'll do the grab bag stuff and all of that. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Stick around. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorsteps by tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times help keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer there. Their part finder tools and 3D schematics can also save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. And their Trademaster perks, well, they have priority shipping, dedicated support. It makes the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5. That's all one word, SHCollege5 for $5 off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, so let's go in there and take your comments. Remember, if you comment there, please put where you're commenting from, and we're just going to grab bag this and talk. If you want to talk about the basketball game last night, we can talk about that a little bit. If you want to talk about the football game that's going to be happening in about an hour and a half, we'll talk about that a little bit. Antonio Kite, LaDarian Clardy, Danny Bill, those guys. In just a second, we'll see how it goes. Now, when you look, Rob Higdon says, do you think we need to win by the spread to keep our ranking? And it's like, Lord, I hope not, because you need to score essentially 60 points then. I don't believe in style points at all. Ole Miss's ranking's not going to drop as long as it's deemed a blowout. The spread doesn't matter. So I do not think so at all. Matthew 2540 is Matthew from Mendenhall, Mississippi, which I'm sorry for Mendenhall, Mississippi. There's a picture right there of a McGee-Mendenhall game, and I was playing for McGee. So unfortunately, everybody knows how I feel about that situation. I don't think Mendenhall ever beat us. That was pretty interesting. And I never played Mendenhall in McGee Stadium or Mendenhall Stadium. Every game was in Veterans Stadium in Jackson. So that's just an interesting perk right there as well. James York from Vicksburg, Mississippi. My mother is in Vicksburg, Mississippi. She just got done with surgery. I wish her a speedy recovery of what's going on. We need to get the next 2 W's to keep our little bro from being able to get up. They would love to see us fail as their consolation prize. There is nothing more dangerous in this world than a 5-win Egg Bowl team. If State gets to 6 wins, it doesn't matter as much. If State gets to 7 wins, it doesn't matter as much. A 5-win Egg Bowl team is the most dangerous team in sports because of what it matters. We've all seen it. Heck, the Immaculate Deflection game, that was a 5-win Ole Miss team. How many 5-win Ole Miss teams have went into that game needing it? There's nothing more dangerous than a 5-win Egg Bowl team, either Ole Miss or Mississippi State. Matthew from Mendenhall says, in the past, Lane has kept his first string in all the way. I remember when he had Jackson Dark, when we were up by huge margins against small teams, he was calling QB runs. Yeah, this is different, though. This is different. Those games were in September, generally. This game is with the Florida game, which is the biggest game potentially in Ole Miss history, not because of who they're playing, because of what it means. You do not want to get risk an injury at all for that game. Now, I do think the first half, they're just going to call the game. But it's because if you play not to get hurt, you're going to get hurt. That's something they told us in high school. You can't play not to get hurt. You have to go all out. So we'll see how it goes as well. Alan Beck, better than the old-time spring game. Algoma, Mississippi. Honestly, this game is. And it attacks, on top of everything else, a perceived weak spot of Ole Miss's team, and that is the run defense. Against Arkansas and against Georgia, those games opened up the way they did because of Ole Miss's inability to stop the run, specifically a power running scheme. Now, the Citadel does not have the dudes to really make you hurt in this old style spring game type thing. But they will show you almost a service team or a scout team look at these running plays that you're likely going to see the same stuff whenever Ole Miss faces Florida next Saturday and Jaden Baugh comes to town. He's the best player on that team. It's not even close. You must stop Jaden Baugh. If you don't, they will beat you. They will beat you down. That is the way that works as well. Rob Higdon says he's from Fort Worth, Texas. Congratulations. What's going on? Thank you for watching, Rob. Anybody in the Metroplex, always good to see what's going on. Charles Coker, Ole Miss should have played Texas this season. Yeah, that wasn't their doing, though. The SEC made that schedule. Ole Miss got Oklahoma, and they're lifelong rivals and have been for like 3 or 4 weeks at this point. So Ole Miss and Oklahoma, you can't take that off the board. That's a game that there will be riots if Ole Miss doesn't play Oklahoma, since it is a permanent SEC rival now. But we'll see. Oklahoma never beaten Ole Miss in 3 tries. Ole Miss has played at Norman and Oxford and at a neutral site and beat Oklahoma each and every time across eras. So that's a pretty cool stat. Ole Miss has never lost a game to Oklahoma or Nebraska. I really like the Nebraska one, by the way. But Ole Miss playing Texas, it would have been fun. Next year, I think Ole Miss plays Texas. So that means that Arch is going to be facing the Rebs for that game. William Bronson says the Egg Bowl is at 11 a.m. on Friday. Is far better for visitors than 7 p.m. on Thursday. Rebs should be petitioning now. The bell rules must be followed. It's weird. It's weird. They just showed Ole Miss walking into the stadium on game day against the Citadel, by the way. So that tells you the respect that Ole Miss is getting nationally. But the rules are not going to get followed. It's going to be the same as it's always been, which is terrible. So it's one of those things, if you've never been to see a game, especially an Egg Bowl in Starkville, your ears literally ring like Thursday after the game. And makes it really hard when you lose hearing that ringing in your ear over and over again. I think the Egg Bowl, there's a part of it that element makes it a little bit more serious because you can't get over it because Thursday you're still thinking about it because you're dealing with tinnitus or whatever from the noise that happened from the cowbells. But there's nothing more dangerous than a 5-win Egg Bowl team. Right now, Mississippi State is at 5 wins, and they have Georgia today. They have Missouri next week, and then they have a week and then Ole Miss. If they don't beat Georgia and they don't beat Missouri, they'll be a 5-win Egg Bowl team. And that is worth paying attention to if we're going to be completely honest about it. If we're going to be real, we need to pay attention to that. Rob Higdon from Fort Worth, if we finish with 2 losses, do you see us getting into the playoffs? Yes, I do. I know everybody likes to say that, oh, you need 11 to get in right now. But there's still losses for everybody to have, a month worth of them. So we don't know if there's going to be an overabundance of 11-win teams or 12-win teams. It might be all the 10-2 teams get in, not from the Big 12, not from the ACC, but the ones from the Big 10 and the SEC are likely going to get into the tournament. But the point is, there are losses that are there to be had. Oklahoma still has to go to Alabama. Vanderbilt still has to go to Tennessee. Texas still has Georgia and Texas A&M. Texas A&M, this Missouri game today is not a gimme, but they still have to go to Texas. Alabama still has Auburn sitting out there on the schedule. They still have a game against Oklahoma. There's losses that are going to be had. So 10-2 is likely going to get you into the playoff, despite what everybody says. But you can think of paths. You can see the path of like, oh, this 10-2 team is going to struggle, but it just never plays out that way. So until probably the week of the Egg Bowl, I'm not going to dig into, does Ole Miss get in at 10-2? If Ole Miss wins the next 2 games and gets to 10-1, I'll start looking at that stuff over the bye week. But as it sits right now, I don't see a problem with them getting in at 10-2 right now, especially at number 6. And if you win the game against Florida, you win a game against the Citadel, you're probably going to end up being 3rd or 4th going into the Egg Bowl. And if that happens, even a loss in the Egg Bowl, you're not dropping down below 10. So you're probably going to get in. Mark Walsh from St. Louis, looking for a high-energy game. Hope the crowd stays in it and be loud. Rebs by 100. I would not hold your breath on the crowd. Listen, this whole crowd argument that people are having is stupid. It's ridiculous. In 2018, during a generational run, Nick Saban, every press conference, made fun of the students, and they tried to figure out a way to make the students stay at Alabama in 2018. At LSU, they don't do that. They always go to games. Just a year ago, there was an article about, it's too hot to go to games. That's why people are leaving. If you look at the stadium, it looked absolutely terrible. That was last year. That was a conference game potentially too, I think. Florida the same way. Everybody has these problems. Nobody is a slam dunk. You're going to get to the game and you're going to say that every game, doesn't matter who you're playing. That doesn't exist anymore. But I can tell you one thing. Whenever Florida comes to town, it'll be loud, it'll be packed, and everybody will stay to the end. I can guarantee that. Today, no, they're going to go pay their $150 cover or whatever at the library, and they're going to start their day at 3 o'clock drinking, and several felonies will end up getting committed that night because they had all the alcohol flowing and all of that, and it's like, whatever. But no, I do not see a situation that they're going to make it to where the game is there for the whole thing. Crowd looks good. Students being held accountable with digital tracking. I don't know if I agree with that, by the way, but I like the fact that they're going to give out a code in the 4th quarter. And if you put that code in, you get priority points for next season tickets. That's smart. And Charles Coker, all the rules should be suspended for the Egg Bowl, like it always is. That is tradition. Anyway, thanks very much for tuning in. The Ole Miss versus the Citadel game coming up in about 90 minutes. It should be a lot of fun. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves in offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we are the front door of Ole Miss. Don't believe me? Google Ole Miss Podcast and see how much we come up. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's totally free. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in all of college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We will see you tomorrow or in the post game. Anyway, take care.